We're at the next step of our journey, the Slave History Museum. We went to the point of no return in Badagry, and now we're here in Calabar. They have some really interesting artwork.
Look, they put the teardrops in like the chains.
Yeah. This is really well made. We are Animal Planet.
Alright, my name is Mrs. Joy Omaomi of Maka. I'm the curator in charge of the Slave History Museum. And this is Slave History Museum, Calabar. So you're all welcome. Okay, I know you've heard about the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, and you know that the transatlantic slave trade started with Africa as a whole. Firstly, here in Calabar, Calabar was very important during the transatlantic slave trade because Calabar had a vine trading post and then a trading center here within the town. It was so because most of the slaves that were taken from the interlands, you know, from the Igbo sides, the Ibibio sides, they passed through the interlands and came in here and they brought them to this very place. This was one of the forts that were built by the Europeans, and they called such forts barracons. The slaves were kept here for a number of days, you know, to be macheted, to get used to the hardship, and then they were transported, taken to Esumba Beach, across the creeks. Then from there they were taken out into the New World. The Esumba Beach is very important, which, you know, I don't know if you've visited there before. It's at Akpabuyu. The beach is important because from there from that point, it was the point of no return. You would never return again when you get there. We had about 20% of the slaves that were taken from Africa, taken from Calabar, because then old Calabar laid up along the coast of the Bight of Biafra. I know you visited Lagos before. I know that Lagos is known as the Bight of Benin, but this is the Bight of Biafra. And 20% of the slaves that were taken came from here. We had about 58% of those slaves that came from Igbos, they came from Akwa Ibom, and then about 48% of the slaves came from Cross River itself, within the environs. Then 1% came from the north. From the research we've had so far, we find that most of the slaves that came from Calabar axis were settled in Cuba.
Cuba?
Yeah. So we find that even the tradition of Cuba, the music, their dance, their masquerade, are basically what we have here in Calabar. So it's like a reenactment of those things. And they've not, up till now, they still have their festivities.
What you are seeing here is a way of demonstration of how the Europeans came to Africa and took the blacks to America, where they were engaged in forced labor. Now, the essence of this display was to avoid communication, because there was that tendency that these guys could actually conspire with one another and probably hijack the ship on the high sea. And that's why we've seen that the head is facing the legs, meaning that there is no way they could communicate with one another. You know, so with that arrangement, they could be monitored while they sail along. As you could see on display, that's how the Europeans came here. They've captured the blacks and they've tied them up. They're now being laid to be docked in that ship, just like we showcased there. And that was actually the interior design of the ship. As you saw that arrangement there, that was how they were arranged individually. All that you are seeing there were humans. So that ship must be full to its brim before it could leave the shores. The dead ones, the sick and the weak, they simply throw them overboard. Finally choked those that are still alive to ensure that none of them survived as they moved on that trip. If the ship or adventure is about capsizing due to overload or bad weather, they start dropping them inside the water in order to stabilize the ship. development of the slaves, how the slaves were being procured, as it were. So what we are seeing here served as a medium of exchange, which the Europeans exchanged for the slaves. And that's actually what they call the Manila currency. Manila currency. Here we're talking about objects like the empty bottles, the gin content itself, the heads of tobacco, the cowries, the copper rods, the beads, the bells, the manilas. In fact, those things that were alien to African society. The manilas themselves, even the wooden mirror with which you saw our images for the first time, and we shouted, wow. And by such display of ignorance, the white man even capitalized on that in taking slaves. Because of the trade here, we have, for example, Chief William Seriki Abbas. Chief William Seriki Abbas was a slave boy that was sold into slavery. He's from Badagry in Lagos State. That's one of those that arranged their private barracks. I hope you must have seen them. So as I speak to you, those barracks are still there and they're now national monuments. We only have the likes of Eyonsa. Eyonsa is from Creek Town. Creek Town is at the Dukwale local government area of Cross River State. The white man considered this man to be a very honest fellow, very upright. He never played pranks with them. And for that singular reason, they changed his name from Eyonsa and prefer to call him Eyo Honesty, Mr. Honesty. And then made him a very powerful king and showered him with gifts. Whereas those that worked on sugarcane plants were gagged. They gagged them so that they were not permitted to eat up the sugarcane. They only opened up the mouth to feed. After that, that mouth was shut. Now we have here swords and spears presented to traditional rulers as a mark of respect, as a way of recognizing their positions. You know, these are, traditionally conventional warfare. But in this case, those were a kind of gifts. And that's what the white man called the staff of office. Staff of office, symbol of authority. Now, the essence of all that was to enable them to penetrate their various kingdoms so that they could carry out their selfish ambitions. It's not as if they so much love them. Slavery, indigenous slavery. This beneath bronze plaque is depicting such practice. That is to say, that it was not actually the white man that imposed slavery upon blacks. Is that understood? It was actually our traditional rulers that have started this process. They have been on it before the arrival of the white man. And that is what this demonstration is all about, trying to explain. You could see the Oba there, the Oba of Benin. You could see the chiefs surrounding a boy in the middle that have been gagged and chained. Probably that guy must have committed an offense. Now, if convicted, that guy could be used for rituals or could be sold into slavery. So those are some of the practices Africans were doing when the white man came here. So for the white man to come and see what we were doing, they simply capitalized on that in taking slaves. Now, as we are blaming the white man, we actually share that blame because we started it all before the white man arrived. Abolition is those guys that actually abolished slave trade. The likes of John Newton, William Wilberforce, Granville, Sharp, Lord Mansfield, and they were many, right? They were the guys in the British Parliament that actually argued and signed a bill into law that abolished slave trade. Now, these are beads. These are beads, they are now used as body adornments. They were actually brought in by the Portuguese. The Portuguese traders were the first the first Europeans that first arrived there in Africa. So they were the guys that brought all this, presented to our traditional rulers. And our traditional rulers in turn now use them as body adornments, just to showcase class, to display their wealth at the expense of their fellow brothers and sisters. So this place is regarded as the Dark Era. Why is it called the Dark Era? Because it was really associated with the slave era. Because during this period of slave trade, nothing actually was happening on the continent. Everything became stagnant, and that's why we called it the dark era. Because the guys who were supposed to have developed the continent have been taken away. That's why it is dark, so that we take the story from here. Okay? Now, we have here a typical barracoon. A typical barracoon, as it were, looked like that. All right? And it was right here that these fellows realized that they've been deceived by the white man. They've been deceived by the white man, and they lamented. They lamented, they complained, because the white man actually promised them greener pastures abroad. About branding. Now, after they've been sold, they were branded. You could see the white man there, the very hot iron, which is going to use to create that mark of identity at the back of that slave, so that at the end, their owners could look at such identification marks and identify them anywhere, anytime, any day. A cotton field, typical of places like South America. You find such cotton, such fields in places like South America. On this field, you may notice they've been paired male and female. Now, the reason for bringing the male and female here was to enable procreation, so that they could have children at the end of the day. And those children automatically belong to the slave masters. They equally deploy them on the field like their parents, as you can see over there. And what they normally do is, as these children are growing into adulthood, they were separated from each other so that they do not recognize themselves anymore. And through that, a young man can go ahead and marry his own sister and keep having children, not knowing actually that they are siblings. It is called Ekpe. Ekpe. For your information, Ekpe is the culture of the Efik people of Calabar. Yes. Now, this masquerade, like I said, depicts a culture called Ekpe, telling us that these guys actually moved on with their culture. You understand? So, when they get to the Americas, after working hard on the fields of America, they retire home. As you could see them over there, they gather themselves, start beating their drums, dance, make themselves happy, entertain their hosts, remember home and all that. But with time, the white man felt threatened with what they are doing and discouraged them from doing all that, and encouraged them to go to the church. As you could see them over there, seated in front pews in the church, even allowing some of their brothers to do the preaching. Now, the essence of all that was to see how they could be converted so that they may forget their old ways. But a lot of them resisted that and kept practicing their culture till death, even though in diaspora. They could decide to strip them naked, flogged, or they may hang them while torturing them. A lot of their brothers and sisters do gather by to watch what is being perpetrated to their, kinsmen. In that process, a lot of them do die, could not withstand the torture. They may even go ahead to unleashing the dogs on them to bite them up. Now, the essence of all that was to send a strong warning to those of them watching so that they do not commit such offense next time. It is regarded as the center of ancient civilizations. Here we are going to talk about our numerous cultures that goes across Nigeria, So it's all about creating that cultural awareness, getting people to know that they have to practice their culture. Forget what the white man has said. The white man tried to condemn African culture by saying that African culture was fetish, it was barbaric and all that nonsense. So we are trying to sensitize our people that there is nothing practically wrong with getting to practice your culture, knowing your culture, teaching your culture to our younger generation. Because a lot of our youth don't know about their culture. Because we believe that there's no way you can define your future if you don't know your past. Outside in Nigeria, where you have some of these archaeological findings, you understand? The trace, that is actually how For example, that is the Nok area where you have the Nok terracottas, you have the Yoruba area and all that. This is the entire northern Nigeria, and so on and so forth. Equally, how Bakoi Jagam is a culture of the North Central Cross Riverians. Talking about monoliths. Now, monoliths are stones. Each of them here are representing the ancestors. They represent their ancestors so that they could look at them and communicate spiritually. Like I said, the culture of an Efik man is Ekwe. We have the culture. And here, we are talking about graphics, as you could see on their bodies. These are graphics. Each of them here are pointer. Each of them are saying something. In other words, they are coded information. They are coded information. If you are not part of this culture, you may not understand, you not decode them. You have to be there. Igbos are great guys, have to go and find one or two things around them. Now, Igbubu is actually in Anambra State, Nigeria. There's a place called Igbubu, alright? Their Igbubu, and their culture is Igbubu, just like the Nok terracotta, Nok culture. Igbubu happens to be another old culture, sub-Saharan Africa. Benin was raided by the British in 1897. The British raided Benin in 1897, where they removed Overame II. Now, Overame II was the Oba in charge of this kingdom, when the Europeans arrived there. For the fact that he resisted them, he never allowed them, access to his kingdom. So they did everything humanly possible to dethrone him. At the end of the day, his people, sold him off. There and then he was captured, dethroned. Not only dethroning him, they removed him from Benin, brought him to Calabar here. I don't know whether they showed you guys where that guy was locked up. Yes.
Yeah, we saw it.
Yes. Within that period, they now had the opportunity to raid this kingdom. In fact, they looted the whole artifacts in the Benin kingdom. Not only looting them, the whole place was burned down. Now, this is a culture of the Poors. Right here in Calabar, there are people they call the Poors. Now, Calabar is very, very unique in the entire history of Nigeria. Are you with me? Now, right here in Calabar, you have three major ethnic groups. You have the Efik, you have the Poors, you only have the Efuts. Unlike any other mega city in Nigeria here, you always find a monarch, a king, that took charge of each city. Talk about places like Lagos, you have the Oba of Lagos, you have the Oba of Benin, all these guys taking charge. But here in Calabar, they are always three at any given time. Three of them are equal, equally respected. The Efiks have their Oba of Calabar. The Oba of Calabar is not for everybody. The Oba of Calabar is specifically for the Efik kingdom. Then the Poors that have these subjects have their Ndidem. And you cannot be Ndidem of the Poors without putting that mask on your head through coronation.
All right, that was a really informative tour. Hope you guys enjoyed. Got to learn a lot about Calabar and its slave trade. This is where most of the slaves who came from Nigeria and almost half of the slaves that were taken by the English came from. So, like, comment, subscribe.
That's right.